consists of a couple parts, but one of the parts here is this Prezi presentation, which I'm going to get started with. I wanted to say I'm really excited to see everybody here because there are people that I've known for years and years, there are people that I've only known for a little while, and some people that I don't know at all and are just here for the topic. So I'm really excited that everybody was able to make it. Thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and get started. So, for a brief introduction, like I said, some of you, hi Terry, sit right where you're at. Some of you have known me for a long time. So my name is Rebecca Evans. I'm a Japanese major at ASU. I've been studying Japanese for about 8 years now. And last year, as sort of the culmination of my experience as a Japanese major at ASU, I studied abroad in Tokyo, Japan, specifically at Waseda University. And Waseda University is sort of known as like the Yale of Japan in some circles. So apparently it's pretty prestigious. So yeah, it's a pretty good school. And so for my thesis, defense in particular, what I really wanted to do was not just solely talk about my own experiences abroad, but rather to use my experiences and use the objects sort of that came of it, meaning the blog I wrote, the video I shot, the photos I took, to sort of give everyone my experience in a multimedia way and in sort of a workshop way. Because hopefully what I want to do is have everyone sort of synthesize my experiences and use them somehow. Like, oh, I wanted to ask, how many people are considering studying abroad in the future? Awesome. Okay, how many of you have studied abroad or gone abroad before? Cool, cool. Okay, all right. I'm hoping that a lot of people can relate to this and or use it in the future. That's my main goal. All right, so get ready. I'm going to, I mean, there's a photo right there. That's of me and my friends having fun on a random bridge in Kyoto. So there's going to be photos, there's going to be a video, there's going to be some quotes from my blog, and there's going to be some activities, one of which will require you guys to be on one side of the room or the other. You can run or walk, just let's not fall down. But there's lots of space on either end, so it should work. Okay, ready to get started? Woo! Okay, you can just say yes. This is kind of a professional atmosphere, or you can say yes. All right. So to start out with, I want to show you guys the video that I made, and this is, it's sort of like a music video, sort of like a trailer. I'm not really sure what to call it, but it's a compilation of a lot of the video that I shot when I was in Japan. So the title of the video and the document that I've given, oh, I completely forgot, I knew I was going to do this. First of all, everybody, let me introduce my thesis panel. These are the 3 members who will be approving me or not. This is my Professor Wong, who I had as a Japanese teacher my freshman year. This is Professor Hunter, who was one of my human event professors freshman year. And this is Professor Scotland, who was one of my human event professors my freshman year. The document that I gave them is actually the blog that I wrote while I was in Japan, but pared down a lot. And so the title of that and of this presentation and of the video is Baba Aruki, a walk down Baba Lane. So probably everyone here is wondering what the heck does that mean. So the place that I lived when I was in Japan was called Takara no Baba. And it's kind of a weird name. If you look at the kanji, it means something like the riding horse in the tall rice or something, because Tokyo was not always a city. But everybody there shortened that name to Baba, because Takara no Baba is kind of a mouthful. So everyone called it Baba, and at the beginning of the video, you will hear my friend Louie, one of my really good friends there, explaining to me and my other friend what Baba Aruki is. And in Japanese, aruku means to walk, and just a brief linguistic lesson, if you take the ku there and change it to ki, it makes it a noun instead of a verb. So Baba Aruki literally means something like a walk down Baba Lane. So Takara no Baba being the place I lived, so a walk in the area that I lived when I studied in Japan. And I also wanted to sort of make a play on a walk down memory lane because, of course, all of this stuff is very nostalgic for me, and I was hoping to share that with you guys. So what I want you to ask yourselves as I show you this video is, what is the point? What do I want you to take away from it? And why is it important as a historical document of my time abroad? So I'm not just showing this to you like, oh, this is something that I made like for the heck of it, because I don't know, I just threw it together. Like, what impressions do I want you to take away from it? So keep that in mind as I show you the video. All right, and disclaimer, it's not good quality. Don't expect Hollywood. This is a video that I shot on my terrible camera. It was like the cheapest one possible. And the video editing program I used was not good either. So keep that in mind. And hopefully it'll work, because it was sort of like not sure earlier. Okay. So let's see if this will work. you. All right. So let me erase this because I'm going to need this. Okay, so before I move on to the next part, I thought now might be a good time to do this. Does anybody have any particular burning questions about like what was a particular scene in that, or anything along those lines?
Why did he have a dog on his head?
Okay, so that scene was from Yoyogi Park, which is near Harajuku in Tokyo. And people do all kinds of things there. So some guy was training his dog to do like awesome tricks. And so,
I think it was stuffed animal.
oh, the stuffed animal. Okay. That's a different scene.
Well, you know, talk about both. I like both.
Oh, okay, well let me finish talking about that then. So some guy was just training his dog, and me and my friend were walking there, and we saw what he was doing, and at first we just thought the dog was cute, and then we saw, oh my gosh, he's training his dog to do epic tricks. So then I managed to get it on film, and if I had in the audio, you can hear me telling my friend, oh my god, like, oh look, he did it, we're so excited. The other one, that one I'm glad you asked, Ariel. The last scene is of two of my really good friends when I was there, Hiroki and Mahmoud. Hiroki is half Chinese, half Japanese from London, and Mahmoud is from Syria. And they were singing to me a song that they used to sing to each other, and they were like best friends. But they were singing to me, they put my name in it, and this was actually the day that I was going home. They were helping, the dog is mine, and they were helping me with my stuff to bring it to the bus to go to the airport, to go home. So they were saying goodbye to me. Any other questions? Hannah, yeah.
What was that? It looks like it was probably like some sort of art exhibit where the woman was kind of like tearing
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Okay, I find it really difficult to pronounce her name. I think it's Ragnheidur or something like that. She's Icelandic. That woman was she's the girlfriend of my friend Snæbjörn, another Icelandic friend that I had when I was there. And she is a performance artist. So she was performing a piece called Frosting, and the floor started out covered in frosting. And she was in a bride's dress with a robot mask on. And when I came in, I thought that was a piece of art. I didn't think there was somebody in there. So I sat down, and there was like maybe room for 20 people in the room. I don't know why I'm standing over here. There was maybe room for like 20 people in the room. And the door was tiny. I had to like sneak in the door. So we were all sitting around. And I didn't realize this was a real person until I looked closer and I realized that she was breathing like under the mask. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think she's gonna die. But then she started the performance, and it was performance art. So she was just, basically she did a bunch of like really exaggerated and like jerky movements. And there was some really kind of scary music going on. And by the end of it, she'd torn off everything. So she was completely naked by the end of it and crawled back into the wedding dress which she'd left behind. So I talked to her afterward, and apparently the idea was like, pulling away falseness and pulling away the mask that you have on in front of society and how painful that can be, because throughout most of it she was screaming. So, yeah, that's what that was. Any other questions? We good? We good? Anything? Anything at all? Okay. All right, so that's the video. So what I'd like to do now is, as many people as possible, please give me one word or a sentence or a phrase, anything like that, just a brief summary of what you took away from it or an impression that you got. So just a word. Smiles? Perfect. All right, who's next?
Fun.
Fun?
Envy. I want to do it too.
What?
Envy.
Envy. Oh, okay. All right, Hannah.
Zany.
Sorry?
Zany.
Zany. That's good. Ryan.
Global connection.
That's 2 words, but all right.
I'll say connection if he says global.
Thanks, Vic. Steven.
Culture.
Culture. Cool. Becky. What? Movement?
Yeah.
Movement? Yes.
Friendship.
Friendship. Okay. Good one. All right. Who else have a hand raised? Palm.
Colors.
Colors. All right. Who else? Ariel.
Nostalgia.
Nostalgia. Good one. Yeah, that video is very nostalgic for me every time I watch it. Nostalgia. Okay. That's a G. Yes.
Experience.
Anything else? Anybody else? We good? Okay. All right. So, what I want to impress upon you is that words like smiles, fun, friendship, nostalgia, experience, connection, stuff like that. The kind of words that I take away from this are fun and friendship, absolutely, from the video. And I hope also you took culture, foreign culture, so just like the newness of everything. So that is absolutely the impression that I wanted to give you with that video, and I'm really glad you took that away from it. So my question then is, how many people think that this video that I just showed you, accurately represents my entire study abroad experience? So can you raise your hand if you think that that's a pretty good representation of like my entire experience there?
I have a question.
Yes.
How long were you over there?
I was there for 1 year.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't make that clear. I was in Japan for 1 year. How many people think that this is a pretty good representation of my whole experience? Anybody? No. Don't forget. Awesome. You guys are too smart for me. All right, so the answer, as you guessed, is not quite. I'm going to do this because I'm OCD and I don't like things on the board. Okay. So the answer is not quite. So the picture that I have up there is, as I was explaining to Ariel, the two best friends and my very best friend who were taking me to the airport. So yes, my year abroad was characterized by friends and fun and foreign culture, but that was not the entire thing. My year abroad, I was just telling one of my other professors the other day that my year abroad was the hardest year of my life so far. It was the most character building of my life so far. And as I said, I don't want you to get me wrong because it is full of all the things you just saw in the video, but it's not everything that it is. And here's the part where I explain this picture here, which those of you who can't read it, it says gambare, which is Japanese for like do your best. And I wrote that to myself at one point because I needed it. So at some point you might, if you go abroad, especially for a year in a culture that's not similar to ours, find yourself thinking, hey, this isn't what I signed up for, what the heck's going on here? So what specifically am I talking about? And I would like to introduce to you the phases. Bum, bum, bum. So this is something that I think is really important to be aware of if you go and study abroad, and ASU does a pretty good job of preparing you. So just briefly, I'm going to kind of just tell you what ASU gives you as far as like orientation packet and stuff like that. So ASU explains the honeymoon as, well, who can tell me what they think the honeymoon period is characterized by?
Everything's
Becky. Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Becky.
Everything's great, you love everything, everything's new, everything's exciting.
Yep.
You're happy.
Pretty much. Everything is new, sensory overload, your adrenaline's high, your excitement's high, your expectations are really high. Who can tell me what they think culture shock is? Vic.
Oh my god, everything's really different from America. How will I deal with this?
Yep, that's pretty good. The way that ASU puts it is dissonance between native and host cultures. Pretty much. So at this point you may feel a sense of alienation, and the curiosity and enthusiasm that you felt before suddenly is turned to negativity towards the host culture, glorification of your home culture, and exaggerated responses to minor problems, and you might also experience withdrawal and depression at this point. Who can say, does anybody know what they think surface adjustment would be? Okay, go ahead, Hannah. Yeah.
It seems like you kind of adjusted, or at least you're acting like it, to make everything work out better for you.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a pretty good, yeah. So basically, like, you're getting used to the new cultural practices and the new way of living over there, so on the surface, you're starting to feel more confident and more comfortable. So then unresolved problems basically is you might hit like sort of the extreme low where you're in the middle of your time there and you're like, why did I come here to begin with? You might feel extremely homesick at this point. And here's the most interesting part about this period, I think. This is a really good quote. Basically, you realize at this point that your culture is not the only culture and it's not the best culture, and other people have perfectly valid ways of doing things themselves, and nobody's gonna just get it. Like, I think at this point for me personally, I experienced I just wanted someone to be American, and so I could just be American and have them be like, yeah, that just totally makes sense, and not treat me like that was foreign. And at this point, that's why you might feel extremely homesick, because there's nobody around who's just going to get it. So I thought this was a really good quote. You have a hard time articulating and integrating the two value systems, so the new way of living that you're learning and your way of living that you've been raised with, under which you're now operating. And then there's feeling at home, so you accept the new culture as another way of living, and you accept yourself as you're good, and they're good, and it's all good, and we're all happy, ideally. So there's another take, and this I found on a travel agency website, and I just thought it was simpler. So it's the honeymoon period's the same. Rejection is where you become critical. of the new culture, and isolation is when you begin to isolate yourself and you feel depressed at this point, and adjustment is when you're good, you're set. Okay, so now that I've introduced that, and I hope you guys all paid close attention, now we're going to do a bit of an activity. So at the top right corner, that's me in September when I first got to Japan with some of the friends that I made within the first week. The one to the right of me is Tanya, she's from Bulgaria. To the right is Agne, she's from Lithuania. And to the right is Sara, she's from Belgium. And then below that is January, so a couple months later. You can see my hair growing a little bit. I'm with Hiroya, my partner, in an English volunteer class, volunteering to teach an English class, rather. And then in the middle there is April. I had just, I actually went home for a month, back to America. And then I had just returned to Japan, and this was the beginning of my second semester, so I was at a party. And then at the bottom left is the month, like I was just about to leave, so that's one of my best friends that I'm there with. So what I'd like to do is read some quotes from my blog. So we're finally getting into the thesis document that I'm giving to my panel. So I'd like to read some quotes from my blog, and I'll ask you guys to tell me whether you think it's the honeymoon phase, the rejection phase, the isolation phase, or the adjustment phase. Does that sound good? All right. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna keep score, I guess. I don't figure you guys want to like break into teams or anything, do you?
Because everyone wants to be on the rejection and isolation.
All right. Okay, so here's the first quote. This is from my blog. It's so fun speaking Japanese with a group of other people, knowing that none of our native languages is Japanese, and also knowing that none of our native languages are the same. So, how many people think that that one is from the honeymoon period? How am I going to do this counting? Okay. Can I just put a lot? A lot. Okay. How many people think that's from the rejection period? How many people think it's from the isolation period? How about the adjustment period? Nobody. Okay. All right, so that one you guys guessed right. That is from the honeymoon period. I arrived on like September 6th, I think, and that was from September 11th, 2011. So the second quote. God, when did I get to the point where people around me are speaking Japanese, and I'm speaking Japanese, and it's like I can't even tell I'm not speaking English anymore. I'm just having a conversation. I don't even pay attention to the fact that it's a different language. So how many people think that's from the honeymoon period? How many people think it's from the rejection period? How many people think it's from the isolation period? 1, 2, 3-ish. How many people think it's from the adjustment period? Like everybody. Okay. So, this one is from what I would call the isolation period. This was in April, which is just as I had got back from my second semester. So, yeah. Here I was being like, you know, I was excited that I could speak Japanese, but most of the time during that period in April, I was shut up in my room, not talking to anybody. So, here's the next quote. As I walked around by myself today, I realized that I very quickly get annoyed with the unfriendly looks that people give foreigners. How many of you think that's from the honeymoon period? Are you serious, Vic?
No.
How many of you think it's from the rejection period? Like everyone. Okay. How many people think it's from the isolation period? Nobody wants to be like the black sheep here? All right. How many think it's from the adjustment period? All right. Thank you, Mrs. All right. So, this is from the honeymoon period.
Huh.
This is from September 11th, actually the same as the first quote. It's from the same blog entry. So basically in the same breath I was saying, it's so fun to speak Japanese with people, I'm so excited. And then in the next breath I was like, so I realized that I really don't like the looks that people give foreigners right here. So on exactly the same day. So that was from the honeymoon period. Okay.
I was almost right.
You were, that's right. All right. Here's the next one. I hate everything. So take the awesomeness of yesterday and turn it around 180 degrees. Can I kill myself? I can go home now. So how many people think that's from the honeymoon period? Anybody? One? All right. All right. How many people think it's from the rejection period? I'm going to say like 10-ish. maybe the tail end of the honeymoon period or maybe the beginning of the rejection period, but I would still call it the honeymoon period. This was from September 26th, so I'd been there for about 20 days. So, yeah. All right, next quote. A couple more. Well, I have sat in my room all evening, wondering where everyone else on the planet is, feeling all alone in the storm and lacking the motivation to do anything. How many people think that's from the honeymoon period? How about the rejection period? How about the isolation period? How about the adjustment period? Anybody? Okay. Yep, that was right. That's for the isolation period. Pretty straightforward there. All right. So, during class, I had a bit of a claustrophobia attack because the teacher kept getting all up in people's faces instead of asking questions from across the room like a normal human being. I actually got up and left a couple times just to walk around in the hallway because I couldn't stand it anymore. Honestly, I think Tokyo's made me claustrophobic. This was never a problem before. How many people think honeymoon? Rejection. Isolation. Adjustment. Okay. This one's from the isolation period. This was from June. So in theory, it should have been from around about the adjustment period because I left at the end of July. So June should have been when I was adjusting at that point, but my isolation period actually lasted a really, really long time. So that was, I would call the isolation period for me. Okay. I went with Mel and Lily and sang karaoke, which was a lot of fun. Then we walked home serenading each other and got a lot of "the heck are you doing, weird foreigners" type of looks. TE. How many people think that's honeymoon? This is not chronological, by the way. They're all over the place. Is he? Okay. Becky? All right. 2 for honeymoon. How many rejection? Isolation. Adjustment. Everybody. Okay. This one, I would call this the isolation period as well. Maybe isolation bordering on adjustment period. This was June 18th, so it was in that period when I should have been adjusting, but actually I was still pretty isolated all the time. Okay. All right, so I've got 2 more quotes here. Today I had class, and that's about it. And this week I have class, and yeah, that's my life. I wish I had more interesting plans coming up, but I don't yet. Hopefully I can make some. How many people think honeymoon? 4 people, 5-ish. How many people think rejection? Isolation? Adjustment? 4-ish. All right, this was all over the place. This one was from the isolation period. This was from June 18th as well, actually, the same day where I was talking about coming home from karaoke, singing with my friends. So, all right, here's the last quote. I do not understand people who are like, "Oh, my year abroad was the greatest year of my life, blah, blah, blah." Man, forget that. I just want to go home. I'm so sick of this place. I need my life back. I want to just leave and pretend I was never here and it was all a dream. How many people think honeymoon? How many people think rejection period? How many people think isolation period? 5-ish. And how many people think adjustment period? All right. So this one was from the isolation period. This was April. So this was pretty soon after I had got back from America for my 2nd semester. And actually what happened was I was really pleased to have gone back home because I felt like I'd recharged. And then about a week after getting back, I didn't feel recharged at all. All right. So does anybody have any inkling as to what I'm trying to show with that activity?
Yeah.
Vic, I saw your hand first.
Studying abroad may not be all rainbows and intercultural connections, and actually there's a lot of isolation that you feel being the only foreigner from a place where you're from.
Good. Wow.
Phases can be very individualized.
Good. Eric.
Phases can easily bleed together because there's no clear cut one or the other.
Good. Anybody else? All right. Cool. Glad you guys kind of took exactly what I wanted from that, I think. All right. So the next activity I want to do, everybody get up. So that you're not all just sitting around this whole time. Okay. So, you guys can sit. Yeah, you guys. All right, everybody. So this is the truth side. So if you want to be on the side of truth, you better be over here. Okay.
No one walks
Truth
over
is-
there.
All right, so that's true over there. So over here is false with the map, because the world is a lie. Okay. All right, so what I'm gonna do now, and I hope you read this, by the way. So true or false? It wounds and is sometimes pleased with people. True or false? This is just some random shirt in Japan. It wounds and is sometimes pleased with people. Sadness and hate.
Depends on the subject.
What?
Depends on the subject.
That's true. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you some statements, and I want you to walk over there and hang out by truth if you think that this is a true conclusion that I made about my time abroad or a statement about study abroad in general, and false if you don't agree. So here's the first statement. I focused a lot on academics during my year abroad.
We know.
Wow.
So it looks like more people are saying false than saying true, I think. Okay, so this statement is true. I spent about as much time on academics in Japan as I did at ASU.
Oh, ye of little faith!
So the academic system in Japan, and probably in any other culture that you're going to go to if you go abroad, is different from the one at ASU. So I had 10 classes each semester while I was abroad, and each one was about 1 credit. There were like 1 or 2 that were 3 credits. So the system is very different, so don't expect it to be the same. And yeah, I studied a lot, as you could tell by that one quote where I said all I'm doing is class. Come on, guys.
That sounds normal to me.
All right, next one. You're in for it? All right. In the end, I mostly regret having studied abroad.
Hmm.
We've got a thesis project out.
So nobody got tricked by that. Yeah, that's not true. I absolutely do not regret even a little bit studying abroad. It was the most character building, even though it was the hardest experience of my life. And I sort of met myself for the first time. It's like me versus adversity versus new situation versus all of this stuff. So this was a chance for me to really, really grow as a person. So I absolutely don't regret it, even a little bit at all. At the time, maybe, but not now. Okay, so third statement. You good, Kwanzaa?
I'm so smooth.
All right. I made many real and lasting friendships while abroad.
Man. I'm just taking the pictures, don't worry.
Many.
Yeah.
Okay. So my little brother is onto something. I'm gonna say this is true, but it's kind of a trick question.
Yeah.
Even though it's really hard to keep in touch with these people now because they're all really far away and actually all over the world, the friends that I made, I did make some really deep and really close friendships while I was there. But Steven's right, I made some. I didn't necessarily make many. So, bit of a trick question. Semantics.
So do we get credit for the question then, standing over here?
Yeah, I hope you're marking your points because I'm not marking your points. Alright, so next statement here. I was pretty well prepared to fit in with the new culture before going.
Ho ho.
Oh, you have great faith. Okay, this one I'm gonna call false. Sorry guys. ASU and my Japanese classes and everybody who offered to give me a hand prepared me as best that they could, but I really think that unless you hang out with people from a different culture enough and sort of immerse yourself hanging out with those people a lot, you're just not going to be prepared for being completely immersed in a new culture and a totally new way of life. So I was not prepared. So I guess kind of a trick question again. People tried to prepare me, but I wasn't prepared. All right, so this one is kind of pertaining more to people who are studying Japanese and stuff like that. So when I left Japan, I had a good number of Japanese friends. Nobody moving?
What's a good number?
All numbers are
That was good.
So when I left Japan, okay, let's say when I left Japan, I had 10 or more Japanese friends.
10 or more?
When I left Japan, I had 10 or more Japanese friends.
Bye, Andrew.
Okay, so this one's also false. So the reason I say that this is sort of catering to people who have gone to Japan or want to go to Japan is because it sort of became an accepted fact among all the foreigners there that we didn't really make friends with Japanese people. It was just really hard to do for some reason. I'm not sure why. Shinya, Natsuki, Yuki, you guys are cool. Alright, so let's see. Let me skip a couple of these because I think this is taking too long. If I could do a year abroad now, I would probably handle it in largely the same way.
Mm.
As an after study abroad, or as you haven't done it yet? Or is this?
So if I could do a year abroad now, having had the experience that I had, I would handle it largely the same way.
Are you saying you would
More or less.
enjoy it, or are you saying you would react?
I would more or less make similar decisions and react to things similarly.
Definitely more Duran Gray concerts.
Yeah, that's true. Alright, so this one is also false. Sorry guys. I would say that because of all of the experiences I had and everything, you know, I learned so much. I'm not the same person that I was when I went. And so coming back, I am a totally different person, so if I were to go again, I don't think that I would make a lot of the same choices, do a lot of the same things, react the same way. And in fact, I discussed this with my panel, I think, a couple times. I would reread my blog sometimes, and it would feel very uncomfortable for me to be rereading my blog and editing it, because I can't relate to myself anymore. I would reread it and be like, oh my god, who is this person doing this crazy stuff? I would not be doing that. So I would not do things the same way, probably. Alright, so last one. This is an important one. The return to Arizona was fairly smooth. I didn't have too much difficulty settling back in.
Ooh.
True or false?
Let's stay on the center because it's right all the time.
I realize that. Okay, alright, you guys got me. So it was not at all easy for me to settle back into Arizona when I got here. Like that quote that I mentioned earlier, I think when you go abroad, or at least for me, when I went abroad, I learned a new way of doing things, I learned a new way of living, and those habits just imperceptibly became part of my behavior patterns. And so when I came back here, like not only behavior, but way of thinking. So when I came back here, I had sort of, in a way, forgotten how to be American, or at least be strictly American and know being Japanese influence as well. So I had a lot of difficulty settling back in, a lot of difficulty relating to people. So the transition was really hard. It took me maybe 2 months or more of just kind of recovery period from everything. So you guys can all take a seat now.
Sitting.
Yay! I hope you're all good and worked out now. Alright, so this is the end of my presentation. The reference that I mentioned, the travel agency website that had those 4 stages is up there. The links there, the first one is to the blog that I've been talking about, and the second is to the YouTube video, which I've just made public, so you can look it up now. If you just type in Baba ARUKI, it should come up if you're interested in watching it over and over or something. And I want to say thank you to Arizona State University, ASU Study Abroad, Waseda University, my lovely panel, Professors Wong, Hunter, and Scott Lynch, and everyone who came, thank you so much. And I also made this a Facebook event and invited a ton of my friends from Waseda, and a bunch of them said, I'm attending in spirit, so thanks to them as well. And so I hope if you take nothing else away from this, I hope that you take away, please do study abroad, because it is all the things that I showed in the video, but just know what you're getting yourself into. So it'll be the experience of a lifetime, including like all of the experiences you can imagine, the good ones and the bad ones. So, the end? Thank you. And I was thinking, my panel will ask me questions, but I was thinking, if it's okay with everybody first, if you guys would like to ask me questions, then we can do that first. So does anybody have questions? Vic?
I noticed you sort of labeled your experiences according to chronological stages rather than how you actually seem to be feeling. Was there a reason you did that, or just because it seemed like the stages should be a certain way?
So when I looked, okay, so in the ASU literature and some of the stuff I've seen online, they like to sort of say, oh, this is going to last 6 to 8 weeks or whatever. So I think that people have a tendency to make estimates about how long these phases are going to be, and I mean, I think maybe that's useful for reference to sort of guess maybe it'll be about this long, but as a couple people said, I really think that it totally depends on the individual, and it's not linear. It's oftentimes 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So you're sort of honeymoon, and then your rejection period, and then you go back to honeymoon for a little while, then you go back to rejection, and then you're isolated, and then you're rejecting everything, and then you're isolated, and then you're adapting, but then you're isolated still. So you're sort of going back and forth all the time. And another thing is you're going through those cycles, like I was going through the entire cycle in a one day sometimes. I would have a day where I was feeling like, oh, I love everything, everything's so exciting, and then all of a sudden I would just be really, really critical of the culture, isolate myself for a while, and then after doing that, sometimes I would get out and spend some time with friends and feel like, you know what, everything's good, it's all good, I'm okay. So I would sometimes go through those phases just during a day. So, yes, does that answer your question? I might have got off topic.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Yes?
Is your blog available like online or was it
Yeah.
personal?
No, absolutely. I can, here, let me go back to the link then. You can jot that down if you want. It's just, so it's roboco.livejournal.com, and that's, my name is Rebecca, and Vic jokingly decided to change the vowels in my name to O's instead of E's and an A. They call me Roboco instead of Rebecca. So I spelled it that way, and if you spell it with some characters in Japanese, it sort of sounds like a female robot or something, Roboco? I don't know. So it's just it's a bad pun. Yes. Any other questions? Andrew Bob, yeah.
Yeah, no, so you talked about how, and I've heard of this happening, there was a general consensus among the foreigners that you didn't really form close friendships with Japanese people. I'm wondering if you could, I suppose, give some insight into, because from what I've heard, this is a common problem.
In Japan or in?
Well, I've heard it
everywhere?
specifically spoken about Japan, but I imagine it's true of other, of just sort of living abroad in general.
Okay, let me ask, Nikki, you're nodding. Was it the same way in Italy?
It was very, like, I studied abroad in Florence, Italy for the same time period that Rebecca was in Japan.
It's my roommate, Nikki.
Oh, yeah, I will. I did not go home, but, like, it was similarly difficult to break into the youth specifically, because depending on where you go, Americans have a sort of, like, you're from America, you have a certain stereotype. So that you will experience a degree of rejection just based on that. And like there's TV, people get their impressions of you as an individual from what they see in the media.
Okay, so it sounds like there's some stereotypes about Americans, so there's that. But my thought is that also, I think, so let's say you're a foreign student coming to America, and you want to try to hang out with just your average American, your average college student on ASU campus. So your average student, let's see, an average student is probably in a fraternity or a sorority, or just on the regular ASU campus, maybe majoring in one of the huge majors like engineering or something. I don't know. So take your average student. Are they necessarily going to be super thrilled to make friends with people who are just here, just on like their first legs, don't really know how to speak English that well yet, don't know anything about the culture, need help with everything? Not at all. I think you said so.
Yep.
So my experience, and I think a lot of my friends' experience, was that going to Japan, we sort of expected everybody to want to be our friends. And at first, I joined a couple clubs and stuff, and people were excited at first. They were like, oh, a foreigner, this person is so new, they have, you know, all this new stuff about them, and they were excited, but then after about a week or two, they were like, okay, this person needs help with everything, including the language. They don't understand anything we're doing. And so I think I became an annoyance to my club members, and I think a lot of my friends had similar experiences. People were excited at first, but then more long term, let me explain. The Japanese youth our age were excited to have foreign friends at first, but then after a while maybe got a little tired of helping them out with everything.
And that makes a lot of sense. I guess what I'm asking is do you have any idea?
Like pointers?
How does one, knowing that this is a problem, and it's an understandable problem, it makes a lot of intuitive sense, how do you address that going into this sort of situation?
Personally, I did have a couple friends who made close friends with the Japanese population, a couple of people. And I think that has to do with common interests, because I think that's how you make friendships in general. And me personally, my interests in Japanese pop culture are sort of more underground. I never explained this, but I can explain it now. The band that was playing during the video is a band that is kind of in the underground rock scene in Japan, and I actually saw them live I've seen them maybe a total of 8 times. When I first saw them, they had about 10 fans. The last time I saw them, they had about 500. I actually have a picture with the vocalist somewhere. So that's sort of where my interests lie, more underground. And things like TV shows, and they're called dramas, sort of like Glee and stuff like that. The dramas in Japan are really popular. I just don't have interest in those things really, and so I was unable to make that connection with just like your average Joe over there.
Do you think I'm sorry to continue monopolizing, but do you think that it's better or worse dealing with meeting people and just sort of engaging with a new culture if you're in a situation, as you were obviously, where you're around a lot of other foreigners, or if you're on your own? Because
personally, I think because I was around a lot of foreigners and taking classes with foreigners, I was able to form really strong friendships with them over experiences that we shared experiences. I'm not sure whether it would be easier to be thrown in there by yourself or to be with a group, but I'm sure the outcome would be a little different. So, thank you, Andrew. Yes, Will?
Do you think your month at home helped or hindered your adjustment to Japanese culture?
I think my month at home for me personally was really necessary because I was having a really hard time over there. I was extremely homesick. I didn't feel like I was adjusting, and I was really looking forward to coming home and being able to see the people I loved again and sort of have that recharge. I don't know that it would have helped me adjust if I had just known I don't get to go home. I have to adjust. Maybe that would have helped, or maybe I would have just sunk into a deeper depression. So I really have no idea. Yeah.
So you talked a lot about your long isolation phase and rejection phase.
Yeah.
If you could do it over again,
Mhm.
is there any kind of advice that you would give yourself or things that you would do differently to try to combat that period for yourself?
Oh man.
In a succinct way, because of course there's a lot
Yeah.
of changes.
I don't know, honestly. I wish that there was something that I could say to myself even looking back, but I don't know what I would say. I think, that was just the period for me where I just felt completely alienated. I maybe would have told myself to get out more and try to connect with the people around here more. I mean, that's really the only advice I could have offered myself, I guess, just get out of the room, but I don't know that it would have helped. Yeah. Ariel, sorry, you've been waiting.
No, you're good. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where I guess it's understandable that it was hard for you to make friends there, because I mean, even as a half Japanese person who used to go back a quarter of each year to go to school there, it's that first week, everyone was so excited to see me, but then after that I became annoying because I didn't speak as well and I was really tall and clumsy. But it's the few friends that you end up making end up being the ones that you go back to over and over again. But how many of those friends did you end up with in the end?
Japanese friends, or?
Yeah, probably Japanese friends.
I made 2 pretty close Japanese friends, and they were both volunteers in my drama class. So all of the classes that I took, save for I think 2, were with other foreigners learning Japanese, because I took an intensive Japanese language program. So one of my classes was a drama class, and we had 2 Japanese volunteers, and one was named Take and one was named Yu. And actually, my friend Take introduced me to Yuki, who's here from Waseda University. Everybody say hi to Yuki.
I met you.
Yeah, he did. He met me in Sakana. And Take introduced us. So Take is somebody that, Take and Yu, they really were interested in foreigners and getting to know the world. they wanted to know different viewpoints. They wanted to know where people were coming from. Like I went out to dinner with them sometimes, like a group of us, and we were just talking about, oh, my culture's like this, oh, my culture's like that, we do it this way. And everybody was really interested in learning, including the 2 Japanese volunteers. And I think that was a little bit not the norm. You know, in Japan, I think a lot of people were sort of like, well, we do it this way, and we're sort of good with it. And I think that's comfortable. I think maybe a lot of people are comfortable in their own culture and feel a little bit nervous to be told, like, well, we do it a different way where I'm from, because maybe it's a little threatening, maybe, so. All right, anybody else? Oh, what? Should I, what? Hannah? What?
You should definitely address your panel.
I should address my family more? Hi, guys. Any other questions from the audience? We good? Should I take questions from you guys now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Questions from my panel?
Okay, just as you know, someone who has seen a lot of people go abroad for study abroad, what do you think it would have been like had you had a homestay?
Oh man, I heard a couple of other people's experiences, so I sort of experienced vicariously, and it seemed like it was sort of similar to the Making Friends experience. Like at first, the homestay family was really excited, and then later communication problems came up. So just, you know, differences in culture and different ways of expressing and communicating things became sort of an issue. Like I have one friend that I guess her host family took a disliking to her, or something happened that they just completely miscommunicated on, and I guess it was just a really, really bad experience for her after that. She didn't want to live there anymore. On the other hand, I think if I had lived with the host family, I would have hopefully improved my language and culture fluency living with an actual family, as opposed to living, I lived in a dorm like of about 150 people from people all over the world, but all foreigners. So that would, I think it would have been a really different experience.
Right, of course I have.
Shall I go?
Yes.
Okay.
So how representative do you think your experience is for someone who's going to study abroad? I'm interested in what components of this you think are applicable to someone, say, doing a summer study abroad, where it's a shorter period of time. Would they experience all the phases, or what would be different about that? And maybe also speak to what would be different about a study abroad that was in an English-speaking country.
Okay. I went to Japan actually before this for about once for a 6-week period and once for a 4-week period. So sort of similar to maybe how long a summer session would be. And I think I pretty much stayed in the honeymoon period the entire time. Like I mentioned before, I think that would depend on the individual, but for me, I don't think I came down from that high the whole time that I was there. I think going to a country where they speak English, I mean, there are other countries around the world that speak English, but their culture is still somewhat different. So I think that would be still, you know, an adjustment, but maybe not as heavy an adjustment, because Japanese culture and the Japanese language, culturally, in a lot of really small ways, are just very, very different from American culture. So I think an entirely new language and an entirely new culture would be more difficult to adjust to, but I think other countries where they speak English, there would be an adjustment period as well. Yeah.
I'm going to follow up real quick because you used a phrase that I'd like to hear you say more about. What is American culture?
Oh man.
You have some concrete things that you associate that with.
Yeah,
so I'd like to
yeah.
hear what those concrete things are.
Okay. Well, I was discussing this this morning in one of my classes with my Indonesian professor, and I think that she was trying to get me to tell her basically about this defense, and I was trying to tell her about Japan and Indonesia, and that got really confusing. But for me, Japanese culture, what I experienced was very characterized by there's a phrase in Japanese that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of outdated now, and it's kuki yomenai. And it means like you can't read the vibe, like you're not sure what's going on in this social situation. So people sometimes shorten it to, I guess this is really old fashioned now, but they shorten it to KY, so it's like, oh, that person's really like obtuse, basically, oblivious. Because what I experienced was in Japanese culture, they expect you to be able to read a situation, and especially like if somebody wants something or needs something from you or is trying to say something, like typically they'll more imply it and not be as direct, and you're supposed to figure that out. And for me, that was really jarring because in American culture, we don't really do that as much. We sort of do, but people have a tendency to be more direct, I think. Or if they're not, then we can say, like, can you just tell me what you mean, please? But in Japanese culture, what I experienced, you can't really do that. So that's one of the things that was really hard to adjust to coming back, because I had to learn again how to have direct, straightforward communication with people. And actually what happened was, I got back and I was reading into things that people were doing that they were not trying to imply things to me. But I was like, oh no, I think this person is mad at me, or I think that they wanted me to do this, such and such. And so I just felt guilty about things all the time, which is how I felt in Japan all the time. So it took me a long time when I came back to be okay and realize that I didn't have to take responsibility for other people, that they would do that and I didn't have to do it. So, and I spend time wondering if I developed that habit out of necessity in Japan because people were expecting me to figure things out, or if I just like overcompensated and thought that I needed to feel that way when I didn't. So, yeah. Does that answer your question? Cool. Professor Scott.
I have several questions that go around the idea of preparation. I'm trying to figure out a logical muddle that's in my head right now. So I think would you agree that you felt unprepared? I mean, when you were over there, that
in a lot of ways,
a lot of your
yes.
challenges and impressions were from lack of preparation.
Possibly.
And yet, that's probably where the character building came from.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think if I had previously, okay, so let's say that I'd studied abroad for a year before, and I knew what it was like, even somewhere else, like Italy or England or New Zealand or something, and I knew what it was like to just be far away from home, to be in a different culture, even if it wasn't as radically different, and to speak either a different language or a language where at least they use different slang and different humor and stuff like that. So if I'd had that sort of experience, especially a long-term one before, then yes, I think that I would have been vastly better prepared to have this experience, and I don't think I would have experienced the huge amount of growth that I did because this was all new. And it was everything new at once. It was new culture, being away from home really for a long term for the first time. I had to build an entirely new community. I had to be learning the new language all the time. So yeah, I think that I grew so much because of all of that all at once.
So it's sort of a good thing.
Yes. At the time I was like, what's going on? But yes, it was good that I had the experience.
Okay, I just want to comment that it's just like having your first kid. Like you're anticipating it, you can't wait, and it's all, you're ready. And then it's like, oh no, I want to go home.
Oh no.
That's not quite. And so I was relating that to like having the second kid. Oh yeah, I know. It's good.
Okay.
All right, so the other thing was, about that is, I think you said that ASU Study Abroad prepared you as best they could. Do you have ideas on how that might be improved?
Actually, I got an email recently from someone in the study abroad office, and he was sending it to people who had been abroad recently. And he asked us that very question, and he had us fill out a survey and say, okay, do you think you need more preparation in such and such an area? And if so, do you think these are good ideas? Or if not, tell us what you think is a good idea. So I filled that out. And I also emailed him about this presentation. He wasn't able to make it, but I am actually planning to talk with him, set up a meeting, and discuss some of these things and see if maybe we can come up with something that would prepare people better. Because ideally, I wanted as many people as possible to come, because I think that just giving people like concrete quotes and video clips of somebody's actual experience makes it more real, as opposed to the way I was prepared was just abstract concepts. So like, these are the phases.
The dissonance.
Yeah, the dissonance between kind of, this is the phase and it'll last 2 months, and then this is kind of the ideal and the reality, like crisp, how it actually really happened to me. Those were different. Yes. Anything else? Yeah, that's wrong.
If you don't mind, I had the same question and you never quite answered it when he asked, which was, how much do you think this was you and this was universal?
Oh, okay. So I do think that everybody's study abroad experience is going to be completely individualized and unique. I think the way that I experienced the phases, like going through different periods, of one day when they're abroad and they're having an I hate everything day or an I've spent all day in my room kind of day, then they'll go, oh yeah, I remember I went to that one girl's thesis defense and she said something like that, and maybe this isn't totally abnormal. Maybe I'm not just having a horrible experience, and maybe everybody I know who's also abroad now, actually maybe they're experiencing these things too. So I was hoping to give the things that I experienced, not saying that everybody's going to experience them the same way, but just giving people something to relate to and some sort of, like, this sort of thing might happen, so look out. So I'm hoping it's applicable in that way. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah.
I love those too.
Okay, I'm going to give a little preface to this because I want the question to come across as simply as I mean it. And just picking up with what Dr. Scott said, it sounds to me like the value of this for someone who might be going on study abroad is not so that they can avoid all of the things that you had to go through to grow as a person,
Right.
but just to be better aware of these kinds of things happen to you. So can I just ask if what it means after you've done this, after you've thought about it, after you've tried to convince us that this is an honors project? No,
You meant that in the nicest
I
possible
did. You mentioned it in your blog. You were struggling with what to do for this.
Yeah.
And it was something completely different, and everything was getting shot down, and you resolved to do this.
Yes.
So, is the outcome of this that you learn to like yourself?
Like myself, like me being myself that went through all of these things and is now on the other side of it?
When you say I grew as a person, does it mean that you came to like yourself?
I would say yes.
In a way that you could not have.
If I hadn't had these experiences?
Yeah.
Yes. But first I had to know myself. And I think that going abroad and having these experiences, all of the experiences, all of the good ones with people with dogs on their heads and all of the bad ones with me hating the way somebody looked at me that day or whatever, I think because all of that was new in a lot of ways, I had no idea first of all, I had no idea what experiences I would have. And then once I had them, I had no idea up until then how I would react. And so learning that about myself and how I reacted and being like, okay, looking back on it now, I think I did the best I could. And I think I like myself. now that I know that that's how I handled it, I guess. Yeah. Yes. Anything else? Any other questions from the audience? Is that all right, guys? Anna?
I actually have a comment.
Please.
I'm not trying to count, but in kind of in regards to this, like, convincing this is worthy of an honors thesis. I studied abroad in Costa Rica last semester.
Is it actually recording? Is it? Okay.
And I'm really impressed by this presentation because I feel like if I could have been to this before I had gone, it would have made me. I also experienced a lot of like very high highs and low valleys during the time.
I could see from your Facebook, it looked like you were having fun all the time.
That is how it can look from the
That's how
outside.
it can look.
But as you touched on, which is really important, and I think that's something that can almost be unbelievable if you've never been through study abroad. There's also a lot of times where you're shaken to your core and you are like, feeling alone and scared, and it can be really like it really helps. It helps me feel better even now, just like looking back to see like other people can empathize. Like I'm not alone. I wasn't this weird freak who's like.
Thank
sad.
you so much for saying that. I was hoping that when I gave this presentation, not only would I have people intending to study abroad who would take something useful from it to bring into their study abroad, but I was hoping so much to have Hannah or somebody be like, I went abroad and I relate to this. You too, Zach?
Yeah,
Yes.
I fully agree with everything, and the way that you experienced it's actually very similar to the way that I did. And I'll say that I was in Kyoto in Japan at the same exact time that she was. And even now, at times, you're still adjusting back to being back.
He's sitting back here getting all nostalgic and going, go back.
I would say though too that what you just said to Hannah about on your Facebook you look like you were having a great time. I do the same thing. go study abroad
Oh
to
yeah.
Europe,
Oh yeah.
I don't.
You don't
Post
post
a picture.
right? Yeah.
My daughter probably would with her Snapchat thing, but you know, she'd be, I hate everyone and my parents weren't here. But for us, we just,
See all the fun of
you know, we're presenting the great
So
stuff.
to me, I wanted to show the video to show sort of like what the Facebook would look like. Like this is what people saw on my Facebook, and you know, they saw me posting the video, they saw me posting all the photos, and I had people saying, "Oh my God, it looks like you're having so much fun." And a couple of times I posted statuses where I said I'm having a really hard time or something along those lines. I had a couple people comment and say, "You're in Japan." I'm not in Japan. Like you know, I didn't get, like I had people who wanted to study abroad and didn't get to go, who were extremely envious, and of course I felt badly for.
Guilty.
I felt guilty. Yeah, I felt guilty for complaining that I was abroad, but you know, I think it looks like it's fun and games all the time, but it's not. You can't know until you've experienced it. Professor Hunter, did you have something?
No.
Oh, okay.
They're really cool.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Nikki. I'll get to you in a second, Hannah and Ariel. Yes.
I'm very pleased that you ended up doing this because I also kept a blog while I was in
Yeah, I
Italy,
remember.
and I had considered making it into something like this, but
I'm glad you didn't. That would have been weird.
well, no, it wouldn't have turned out the same way at
That's
all
true.
because I did not go through the metamorphoses that you did because my parents are European. I've been traveling to Europe since I was a child. Europe is my other home. So it's not like I did not experience the same
Going
sort of,
abroad for the first time.
I didn't go abroad for the first time.
Right.
I don't remember the first time I went abroad. But, so I can't speak and it's almost, I can't almost empathize with this sort of thing because
You can't or you can't.
I cannot because that culture shock did not happen to me.
Right.
Hence, I would have failed my thesis if I had tried to make it work like that. And
I see. If you had tried to give this
if I had tried to,
presentation,
it wouldn't have worked. But my experience also speaks to how highly individualized it is, and
absolutely.
we all
Depends on where you're coming from, your background.
It depends where you're coming from, and we all have various things to say about how you can prepare, and in reality you can't.
Yeah, I
And
agree with you.
people can say, oh, like you said, this is going to last 6 to 8 weeks. It's
Yeah.
not.
Right.
You can't say
it's
that.
not. It's not.
And anyone who says this is how I did it and this is how it's going to work for you is a liar.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to work.
At the beginning of my blog, I have a post where I say something more like disorientation because I was so oriented. I had so many orientations before I left. When I got there, I spent weeks and weeks just getting orientations and so many piles of papers, which helped not at all. So all of the preparation, you have to just get in there and sink or swim. That's basically it. I had Hannah and Ariel, but you guys have asked questions before. Were there any other questions? Because I got to wrap this up pretty quick here. From anybody else? Okay. Hannah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to finish up my comments saying that people, I know that, at least I'm pretty sure Dr. Hunter and Dr. Scott Lynch have been involved in study abroad trips before. And
So
I
is
just wanted
Professor
to
Wong.
say, oh, good, wonderful. I would just love to tell you guys that, at least from my perspective, if something along these lines could be incorporated into the prefacing materials for study abroad, I feel like that would be hugely and immensely successful because I would trade out this honors thesis for my orientation meeting that I had with the study abroad office any day.
Awesome. All right. Ariel?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that even if it's not for as long of a period as where you're going for, it still applies. Because I became friends with you right as you were in your isolation period because that's when he and I started dating.